Warning: some contents may be disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised.
Well, this happened to me just this morning, and I don't know if this is a big deal, but here we go. I walk to the bus stop every morning to go to work at around 6 a.m., and today was a particularly dark morning. It was freezing and it had been raining. My street is the last one in the neighborhood, and behind my street is just the woods. There's no house or street. And for the 7 months that I've been working, there's no one in my street that go out for work at the same time as me. Only one guy in the next street over that sometimes goes out in a hurry. So today I was walking. I just had crossed my street. But then all of a sudden, I hear a noise not too far from me. And when I turn back, there's like an older guy trying to walk silently behind me. And take note, I'm a 23-year-old female. He doesn't look like he's going to work. There's no backpack with him and not even an umbrella, as it was raining at that time. Apparently, he got out of my own street like he was waiting for me to get out of the house. He was walking slow, but when I started to walk faster, I looked behind me and he was walking faster too. So I kinda run a little until I get to the bus stop where some guys always wait for the bus with me. I was terrified with my little taser that I always carry in my backpack. I waited to see the creep showing up in front of the bus stop, but he never did. I guess he gave up when I ran. If he was going somewhere, he would just pass the bus stop, because there's no other way to go out. And the worst part is, there's an old creep in my neighborhood that was in jail for being a serial rapist in like the 90s, and he served his sentence and today he is a free man. But like last month, he was asking my mom to take care of our garden, and he kept creeping around the house when my dad's out for work. I don't know if it was him today because it was very dark, but he's the first one that I can think of. Background: I'm a 24-year-old female, and I live with my roommate, a 23-year-old female, in an apartment in the suburbs of Atlanta. As you may know, Atlanta is super dangerous and crime-riddled right now. So, we have a Ring People camera. It's really perfect for apartments, and we also have a digital lock on our door for safety. Now, on to the story. About 3 months ago, the sweet family from across the hall moved out, and we got a new neighbor. His name is David, and let's just say, he's interesting. When we first saw him moving in, we were a bit taken aback by the sheer amount of stuff that he was trying to fit in his one-bedroom apartment. All of it was anime merch and Star Wars memorabilia. Definitely gives me hoarder vibes, but that's not my business. When the moving trucks left and a few days had passed, my roommate and I knocked on his door to give him a welcome to the neighborhood gift basket with some baked goods, some dog treats and poop bags for his dog, and seasonal candles. Apparently, this was not the correct thing to do. After that day, David got creepy. It started out innocent though. He would come to the door whenever he heard me or my roommate coming or going to have a quick chat, or he would come over regularly to ask for salt or sugar or even toilet paper. Sometimes, he would ask us if we could come over and watch his dog. But within the past 2 weeks, things have really escalated. 2 weekends ago, we were out pretty late partying at the bars near the Braves Stadium. We ended up getting home at around 3 a.m., only to find David sitting at the top of the stairs waiting for us. He acted all upset, asked us where we had been, and requested that we tell him if we are planning to be out past midnight. I laughed in his face and he called me a mindless Stacy. I'm still not sure what that means though. He also asked for access to our Ring camera so he could make sure that we are safe. We laughed at him again and then we went into our apartment. Well, here's the scary part. We checked the Ring the next morning and he sat outside his apartment staring at our door for the rest of the night. When we saw that, we contacted the complex to let him know that he was acting crazy. They told us to contact the police and so we did. The police told us to contact them if he made any threats, but since we lived in a shared space, they really couldn't do anything until he entered our apartment or threatened us. I assumed the complex had something to him because he left us alone for the next 5 days or so. But this week, he is out of control. He is constantly sitting outside of our apartment, and my roommate has started leaving for work an hour earlier so that she doesn't have to cross paths with him. I cannot leave the apartment during the day because he is constantly waiting outside for me. He has asked me out and left love letters on our door, on our cars, and in our mailbox. And I told him once that I wasn't interested, and he told me that he would kill himself if I didn't go on a date with him. Of course, I don't have that in writing so the police won't do shit. He has also put up a Ring doorbell of his own so he can track all of our movements, and will leave really creepy sexual notes when we're gone, so we find them when we come back. What do we do? Update. Thank you all for your advice. For now, my brother is spending the night on my couch for the next few nights until we can have a sit-down meeting with my landlord. We have collected all of the evidence and Ring footage so we can show how much this has progressed. I'm sure the landlord and the police think we're being dramatic little girls or whatever, so we're not going to take no for an answer. Either he leaves or we break our lease and get our full security deposit back. We're also going to file for a temporary restraining order at the very minimum because some of the commenters said that would be faster than going through the police. Again, thank you so much for all of your advice. I'll update you if any crazy shit goes down. Update number 2. Here are some updates. Number 1. We met with our landlord last week. Unfortunately, they aren't willing to work with us as much as we expected. They will not remove him from his unit, and since we didn't want to spend a ton of money to move, we asked if we could move units within the complex. The landlord offered us a 1-bedroom unit on the terrace level, so my roommate and I would have to share a room in what is basically the basement of our building. Not really ideal. Number 2, we spoke to the police and they said that the notes and letters were not enough to get someone on stalking or harassment, especially since he lives literally 3 feet away from us. They did keep the Ring videos and said that they would contact us sometime this week after they reviewed all of the footage. And number 3, we have both moved in with my parents for the time being. Shout out to them for being incredible parents. It really sucks spending $2,000 plus monthly on a place that you can't live. We are actively looking for other apartments, but money is tight since we would have to buy out the current lease and then pay to start a new one, which is also not ideal. So, not the update that we were hoping for, but we are both safe now, and that's what's important. I take a walk every morning as part of my waking up routine. This morning, towards the beginning of my walk, I pass a man who asked me something. He is slightly too close to me, but not enough to make me feel uncomfortable. Just enough that I don't want to slow down or have a listen to what he has to say. I have my earphones in as well, and I don't take them out, but hear enough that he had asked for the time. Without breaking my stride, I glance at my watch, say 7:30, and then I keep walking. If he said anything else, I didn't hear it. About 20 minutes or half an hour later, well, far away from the first time that I came across this guy, that same guy walks up from behind, again, too close to me to ask for the time. I tell him at this point to get away from me and to stop following me, and that I already gave him the time. That escalates things immediately because he shoots back with, "Why? Is it because I'm black?" I respond, "No, it's because he approached me about a mile away with the same question." He says he lives in the neighborhood, so I say fine, but to please stop following me. He denies following me and then calls me ching chong bitch, and then yells for me to go back to China as I cross the street to put more distance between us. This guy follows me across the street and keeps following me as I cross back over. At this point, I'm yelling for him to get away from me and to stop following me, and he's repeating the same lines about being black and hurling racial slurs at me. I'm getting worried that while there are people out at 8 a.m., either walking their kids to school or maybe going to work, no one is going to step up because of the bystander effect. After I cross the street for a second time, he gets right in my face, yelling about how he's not following me. I have my back against an apartment complex, and I'm getting worried that things are going to get physical. When a tall woman with pink hair walks up. I don't remember what she said, but I at some point confirmed to her that he wasn't leaving me alone. She's about the same height as this guy and starts to yell for him to stop following me. He is now being badgered by her, and he's also yelling back the same denials about not following me, and that he's from the same neighborhood, and accusing me that this is all because he's black. Thanks to my lady savior, I was able to break away. A couple that was exiting their apartment, who witnessed all of this, asked if I am alright, which I say yes without stopping. I walk half a neighborhood block down to duck through an alley. And as I'm walking down the alley, checking the entire time to make sure that the guy is not following me, I see the woman with the pink hair has disengaged and is walking off. I am so glad that it didn't escalate for her, and I feel bad for not being able to thank her for her help. I take a circuitous route home, looking behind my shoulders every once in a while.
This all happened about a week before my son's 7th birthday. I, 38 male, hadn't gotten him a gift yet. So after work, I asked his mother to pick him up from school and drive myself to Walmart to browse the toy section for something he would want. While trying to decide between a Nerf gun and an Iron Man action figure, I heard a woman's voice behind me. "Browsing for yourself or a little one?" I turned around to see a woman my age, in an employee vest with a smile, clearly amused by her own joke. "Well, clearly it's for me, but on an unrelated note, any ideas for a birthday gift for a 7-year-old boy?" I retort. The woman chuckled a bit before pointing at the Nerf gun. "This one sells well." Taking her word for it, I put the gun in my cart before thanking her and pushing off. However, she stops me. "Is there anything else I can do to help you today?" she said, stepping into my line of sight again. "No, thank you," I say. "I really just came for the toy, but thank you again." And with that, I push my cart past her. As I made my way to the checkout, I saw a good deal on cherries and decided to swing over to the groceries to see what else I might want to get while I was here. A few minutes later, as I was knocking on some watermelons, I heard the same voice from before. "I thought you were only here for a Nerf gun." I turn around to see the woman again. "Yeah, but I decided to do some grocery shopping while I was here." I knew I didn't need to explain myself to her, but in order to be polite, I decided to reply to her small talk, but keep this short because I was getting a weird feeling about this lady. She continued to follow me around during my shopping, which I decided to cut short given the situation. I then went to the self-checkout since the line was shorter. Usually I don't mind waiting in line for a cashier, but today I wanted to be done a lot sooner than normal. I scanned my items and swiped my points card before paying and then left, the woman standing at the exit doors literally watching me as I left. I thought that was the end of it, until later that afternoon I got a phone call. "Hello?" I answered, only to be greeted by the same cheery voice I'd heard at Walmart. "Hello, is this my name?" I was shocked. "How did you get this number?" I asked. "Well," she started, "I usually don't do this, but I really like talking to you, so after I saw you had a membership card, I looked it up and found your phone number in our database," she said, sounding almost proud of herself. "What the hell? What's wrong with you? Isn't that illegal?" I was outraged. This was an invasion of my personal information. "Oh, come on, it's not that big of a deal. Like I said, I just really liked talking to you. And now that I've called, you can save my number, okay?" Flabbergasted by her nonchalantness over the situation, I blurted out, "No. No, not at all. I'm married, and I don't want anything to do with you. This is not okay." The phone line went silent for a long time before she hung up. She never called again, nor did I see her ever again at the Walmart. But I did report her, so that may be the reason why. But still, I hope I never see that overly friendly Walmart employee again.
This happened to me and two of my friends back when we were in high school. It was nearing the end of the school year, which meant not only were our last finals right around the corner, but so was prom. We were seniors and I unfortunately missed going my junior year due to a family emergency, so I was not going to let anyone or anything stop me or ruin my night. My friends, Marissa, Heidi, and I all went out and picked our dresses together, and not only coordinated colors with our dates, but also with each other. We all met up at my place to get ready when our dates met us at a local park to take pictures and hang out shortly before the dance started. And while we were there, Heidi pulled out her purse and showed us that her mom had bought a few shooters. In case anyone doesn't know what this is, it's just those mini bottles of liquor, and she was supposed to keep them at home. Her mom let her drink occasionally, but only when she was at home and within her sight. She passed one out to all of us, and we quickly took the shots and got rid of the evidence. And afterwards, we headed to the school. The prom itself was a blast with your normal teenage fun. We danced, took pictures, made my ex mad, all stupid fun. It was probably close to the end of the dance, so I think that it was just a combination of people being worn out and teenage angst that some people started getting a bit more rowdy. Some girls started shouting at Marissa, so we all joined in to try and just get her to leave with us so we didn't get into any trouble. Thankfully, she went pretty easily when Heidi bribed her with more shots. She said that we could all go back to her place and have some more drinks and just hang out, so that was our plan. The three of us girls piled into my car, and the guys said that they would meet us there in their car after they went home to change. We left the school probably feeling a bit too invincible. Again, we were stupid teenagers doing some pretty stupid stuff. Physically, I felt fine though. I know I shouldn't have, but we had only had the one shot before the dance and nothing since, so I wasn't even buzzed. We all got in the car with me driving, and then Marissa was in the passenger seat and Heidi in the back. We expected a nice ride as close friends celebrating our high school years. But that wouldn't be the case. I stopped at a four-way intersection at the same time as a car that was coming from the opposite direction. I flashed my lights at them so they could go, but they continued to sit there. After flashing my lights again and no movement, I just decided to go ahead and then turn left. They didn't have a turn signal on, so I assumed that they were going straight, which is why I tried to let them go first. But after I turned, I then noticed that the car had turned behind me too. I was more focused on my friends and driving, however, so I made a sort of a mental note and just continued talking and singing. It didn't last long though, as I noticed that the car was following pretty close, so I pointed it out to my friends. Marissa, being the aggressive type, told me to tap my brakes to get them to back off, and normally I would, but for some reason, I kept telling myself that I shouldn't. Now, it was pretty dark at this point, so I couldn't make out much of the car other than the front of it that looked dark, like maybe black or dark blue or gray maybe. But we quickly learned why they may have been tailgating me when the lights kicked on. Again, between it being dark and not really paying much attention, I didn't notice there were lights on top of the car. In a slight panic, I pulled over and told the girls to just keep quiet. I turned off the music and immediately went to reach for my purse that was on the back passenger side. I had already rolled down my window by the time that the cop approached my side of the car and immediately shined his bright flashlight right into my front seat. I turned around quickly to look at them and greet them, but they then put the flashlight right in my face. I squinted and I put my hand up in a force of habit when there is something bright in your face. But the cop immediately got aggressive and yelled at me to put my hand down. It startled me, but I did as he said and I tried to apologize and mention the light. He then pointed it towards the back at Heidi and then kind of laughed and claimed that he was just messing with us. I looked over at Marissa real quick and saw the what the fuck look on her face. I quickly looked back at the cop and he asked if we were leaving the ball and laughed again, and I told him that we were actually heading home from our prom. At this point, he was still shining his flashlight around in my car, so I couldn't quite see his face. I could see a slight outline and I could see his teeth, so I could at least tell that he was smiling. He made some kind of back in my day comment and I don't remember it exactly, then laughed again. We all just sat there awkwardly. And I really wanted to ask why he pulled us over, but I didn't have it in me. And since he seemed to be in a good mood, maybe he would just forget it and let us go. I wasn't speeding, and I used my signal when I turned, and none of us were like hanging out the windows and screaming either. As he cleared his throat, He leaned down to have his head closer to my window and then asked, "Have you ladies been drinking?" Okay, now I know how some people may respond to this, but I was an 18-year-old girl at that time. I was underage, and we definitely had something to drink. It was literally one shot each of us, and it was several hours earlier. So I felt fine. But between the night so far, being pulled over, and the adrenaline and anxiety was high, and I was beginning to freak out again. However, my response was immediately no. He leaned in closer, and his voice became a bit more stern, and he said, "Now, don't lie to me. I'm not stupid. I can smell the alcohol in this car." I began having an internal meltdown, worried that I was going to go to jail and my parents would find out. But I immediately started pleading. I fessed up and I told him that I just had one shooter and that it was earlier that night and we were going straight home, so there wouldn't be any more, and I apologized. Marissa tried telling me to shut up, but once I started, I just couldn't turn it off. After a few minutes of my pathetic pleas, the cop stopped me and told me that while he appreciated me telling the truth, he was going to have to arrest all of us and have the car towed. Heidi then began begging with me to let us go with the ticket, and Marissa was more seeming to argue with us. Then, he did that ear-piercing whistle, making us all stop and look back at him. He then leaned down, putting his arms on my window and said, "I'd hate to ruin your girl's night, so maybe we can work something out." I was expecting him to just give me a ticket, which still would have sucked, but at least I was much more willing to tell my parents about that. However, he had something else in mind. He mentioned an empty building with a pretty empty area. It was where an old mall had closed, and he asked us to follow him there and just have some fun for a bit. Forget the ticket or going to jail. I was even more terrified at this point. Was this cop really suggesting what I thought he was suggesting? I was frozen at this point, not knowing how to react. What would happen if I told him no? Would he then arrest me? But of course, Marissa, being her normal aggressive self, took over. She leaned down pretty far to look at the sky and pretty much challenged him and questioned him. Some of the berating from her included, "You know we're minors, right? We just told you that we're coming from prom. I'm recording this, so why don't you explain in detail what exactly you wanted to do with us? Why did you even pull us over? Don't you have to give us a breath test before you can do anything? Ash, don't get out of the car. Don't do anything unless he makes you take a test. What's your name anyways? I want your name and your badge number." The cop got pretty quiet at that point and then tried laughing again and said that we were pretty smart girls. He tried to play it off about testing us or something, and then he said that we were free to go, but told us to just be careful and go straight home. He never told us his name or badge number, and we waited for him to get back into his car. And when he didn't drive off, I decided to go. Part of me was worried that he might follow, but I just wanted to get home at this point. The guys obviously beat us to Heidi's, and we told them what happened. They thought that it was really suspicious too, but other than them, we never told anyone about the interaction. I myself was too worried that my parents would be mad at me or something. So fast forward a few months after we graduated. There was something on the news about someone impersonating a cop, and when they pulled over women, they would make suggestive comments and threaten them with erroneous charges unless they agreed to his demands. One lady dared to challenge him, much like Marissa did, but he actually grabbed her by the arm, leaving marks, and tried to open her door. They said she was able to drive away, and she immediately went to a police station to report it. But when she explained everything, The officer she talked to wasn't convinced that it was a real officer. They then started getting more reports, and they all aligned. Someone also was able to see the vehicle, and it was all dark with no markings, like it was an unmarked cop car. But the problem with that is that in the state that I live in, those are prohibited, which led them to believe even more that it wasn't real. Unfortunately, he must have realized that they were onto him because the report stopped and they never caught the guy. I told Marissa and Heidi about this, and Marissa was confident that it was probably the same guy. The scheme, the location, what we experienced, they all matched. So I'm pretty confident that it was the same guy too. The situation alone freaked me out, but when I saw that, I was even more terrified that this was real. This happened to many women, but then I wondered how many more it happened to that didn't report it, and even worse, how many poor women fell for it and followed through. I'm an adult now and much smarter, so when I do have an interaction with someone in law enforcement, I make sure to note as many details as possible and also get their name. You just can never be too careful, no matter who the person may appear to be. My friend and I, both 21 and female, went to Applebee's for a few $1 margaritas, and then we went off to a park where she said that she knew a spot. We go 20 minutes away to this park. We go down this path that takes us around 10 minutes to this bay area. We find a nice log, and then we sit there and watch the sunset. As we were relaxing on the log, a family strolls by with their dog to hang out on the other side of the shore. A few minutes go by and a couple comes through and sets up, and they eat a big pineapple with a knife. The sun sets, but it's still light out, and we didn't think about the walk back. Eventually, we go to head back, and it's dark. The wooden area we have to walk through is getting really dark. We start walking, and she gets her phone camera out. It's pitch black at this point. We start talking about how creepy it was. But then, I felt an uneasy feeling. That feeling you get, afraid that something is behind you. Well, we're walking along, and we go across the bridge up a little hill, and all of a sudden, we hear loud fat footsteps on the bridge. I see light from what appeared to be from his phone, going back and forth as if he was sprinting. We panicked. We start running and I'm thinking, no way this guy is chasing us. His footsteps kinda sounded like he was on a bike. I thought that we'll go up the steep hill on our left. No way this guy is following us and no way he'd go up the hill on his bike. Well, turns out there was no bike. We stopped running as we didn't hear anything. She flashes her light behind us, and there's a silhouette of a man jogging towards us. His body posture seemed to be that he got tired from running. Well, we kept running and stopping to see if he was still chasing us. And then again, we hear footsteps running towards us. We keep looking back while running to make sure that he's not right on us. At this point, my friend screamed, "Hey!" in a panicked voice, and then he screamed back, "Hey!" Then after that said, "What are you scared of?" We keep running and she's on the phone with the police. We finally hit a paved road, nowhere near her car, when I took us up the hill. That was the wrong path we originally took. We knocked on a house, the lights are out, but no one answers. We start down the road to their neighbor, and I look back, and again, I see a silhouette of a man walking behind the first person's house. He got up to the fence and creeped back into the darkness. That second neighbor helped us. His wife got us some water and the police came to take us to our car. This was the most traumatic experience that I have ever had. The intentions of the man felt sinister, and the way he was yelling at us felt so uncanny. I hate this feeling I have. I have so many questions that won't be answered, but I can't get this one question out of my head. What if he caught up to us? I'd like to share about my experience that happened 6 years ago. During one beautiful summer day, I decided to take my dog to the park. I have a small dachshund, and I'm also a 20-year-old female at that time with blonde hair and fairly skinny. The park I decided to stop at, I've been to before multiple times with my boyfriend and my dog, so I felt confident going there alone. The park is also right next to a big busy street and has a lot of families with kids on the playground. The trail of the park circles a big oval around a small lake of water. So, the street is on one side of the oval, and on the other, there's trees and woods. Anyways, I park up on the left side of the park, and I get out of the car, leaving my phone in the car. Again, I didn't think twice as I wasn't planning on spending much time there. I start walking, and halfway through, I notice a white male with a short buzz cut and an orange t-shirt start looking back at me. I was behind him a long ways back, but I decided to keep my distance. I was following him at about 100 feet in front of me, until he decided to keep stopping along the way. He would stop and then look at the trees and the water, so I decided to stop walking along the trail and I walked down to the water. I would look at him from the corner of my eye and notice him staring at me. I started to make myself aware. I look back and he walks away and then just goes along the trail. I go back on the trail and follow from a distance, but then he keeps looking back at me again. We walk like this for another 500 feet, and he then stops and takes a seat on a bench. I noticed that specific bench was almost hidden in the trees near the wooded area and had a trail behind it. Well, I decided not to walk past him, so I turned around and I continued the other way back. As I'm walking and almost halfway through the trail back to the car, I noticed that he is following me. At this point, I started sprinting, and so did he. He was quickly catching up to me, and at this point I am so scared that I didn't have my phone on me. I am surrounded by families and people, and I knew that I would be seen, but still, why is he sprinting behind me? My car is so close, so I began running with my dog, and I look back and he is running behind me. I quickly run up the hill and I get into my car, and he didn't stop running till I sat inside and closed the doors. I'm looking at him. He stops running, he's in the parking lot, and he walks away to his car. I put my car in drive and I pull up behind him, blocking him for 30 seconds or so to show that I see him and that I know. My car is fully tinted, so I wanted to scare him back at this point. I didn't know if I should wait at the park and then call the police or see what his next move will be. But I decided to leave because I was scared and shaken, and without my phone or any proof, I felt stupid. That was the scariest thing that has ever happened to me. So, don't ever leave your phone in the car. Hey everyone, I wanted to share something that me and a few friends experienced in high school. I think I was a bit of a weirdo in high school, but I wasn't alone. I had plenty of friends that accepted my weirdness, and we're probably just as equally goofballs. We were the ones using paper clips and safety pins as earrings, drawing creepy stuff, and other probably edgy things. I cringe at the thought of my teenage years now. Anyways, while we may have been odd, we still wanted to enjoy the events of our school, such as fundraisers, parades, and even prom. A couple of my friends and I all agreed to go to prom together, and one of my friends even tried to hook me up with this girl that I have been interested in. He had asked her if she was available. Actually, he told her that I was asking, and she said yes. So our first date would be prom, I guess. I actually gave a little more care as to how I looked, and even got a matching tie to her corsage. I picked her up from her place, and we met our friends at the community center where they were having the dance. My date was stunning, and it was hard to believe that she was with me. She said that I looked good, and even some of the teachers that were there told me that I cleaned up well and joked that they wished they saw me more like that. I wasn't the best student, but I wasn't a troublemaker either. We were all having a great night between dancing and flirting, eating some of the food that they had, and just the basic high school thing with each other. At one point while we were talking, I noticed a guy who kind of seemed out of place. Even the teachers and adults were dressed nice, and this guy was just in jeans and a suit jacket. I watched as he walked along the wall, looking around, almost like he was trying to find someone. But it was the way that he held himself and looked around that had me on edge. There was an eerie intensity to his gaze at everyone that made me feel like he had no good intentions. Now, while he looked very off-putting, no one else looked at him or was watching him, so I was starting to think that maybe it was just me. I tried to brush it off as just being prom jitters, and that maybe I was just on edge due to the circumstances. So at that time, I just let it go. I continued dancing and talking with my friends, and at one point, we found a table, and about 6 of us were sitting at it. My date had her legs up in my lap, complaining that they were hurting as she had been wearing heels the whole night. And while talking, I spotted the suit jacket guy again, and also noticed that he was walking towards us. I looked back at my friends, trying to find a time to ask if they recognized him. But then he stood next to my date's chair, and then greeted us before I had the chance. He asked us if we were enjoying ourselves, and we all said yeah. He brought up a few things, like the music and one of the drink stations, and we conversed for a few. As the conversation died down, the guy then asked us what we were doing after the dance, which I thought was an odd question. One of my friends mentioned probably just chilling somewhere, and the guy asked us if we wanted to go smoke somewhere. I know everyone at the table, including myself, did, but it was really weird to have an adult offer this to us. We all kind of side-eyed one another, and I spoke up first and said like, "Nah man, we're good, but thanks though." And no one else said anything. He then pushed it, again offering. He said that it wasn't a setup or anything, and specifically pointed at me and said, "I know you like grass, boy. Don't lie." And then started laughing. This accusation did not make me feel more comfortable about him either. In fact, the way he looked at me and pointed at me made me think it was more like intimidation, like he had something on me. So without looking away from him or smiling like I did the first time, I just said, "No one's lying, man. We're just not interested." I was hoping he might get the hint that I wanted him to leave us alone, but he didn't. He then focused on my date. He complimented on her looks, and she seemed a little standoffish, but was being polite to the guy. Until he started making more explicit comments to my date and also the other girls. My date had put her legs down and seemed to push her back more towards me, as if she was nervous that this guy was close to her. Nobody was saying anything, and being that I was already nervous and suspicious of this guy, I was now annoyed that he wasn't getting the hint. So I stood up, called him a few names, and I told him to leave. I also very loudly made a comment about him hitting on teens and stood there hoping that he would finally get the hint or that maybe another adult would come over. The guy again laughed as he stood up and said that if we changed our minds, to meet him at a certain park. I watched as he walked away, but also noticed our gym teacher start to walk over to us. He asked us who that guy was, and I basically asked him the same thing. I thought he was another staff member or part of the faculty chaperoning the dance, since he was obviously an adult. The gym teacher then hollered for the creep and started walking towards him when he took off. Our gym teacher then ran after him too, and we were left wondering who that guy was. We all tried to loosen up again, hoping that wouldn't completely sour our night, but we then had another teacher approach us, saying that we needed to follow them because they had more questions about what just happened. After we explained it all to them, they told us that they were handling it and to go back to the dance and enjoy our time. Thankfully, we were able to have a good rest of the night, but when we separated afterwards, I was still left wondering about this guy. Who was he, and how did he end up at the prom without any of the other teachers or even other students feeling like he didn't belong? I spotted him pretty quickly, and I knew something wasn't right. I was kicking myself for not reporting him sooner, but I didn't know all the people that work for the school or the district, so I just assumed that it was me being paranoid. That was until the following week when I was called into the principal's office, where I saw one of my other friends from that night and a police officer. The principal said that the officer wanted to know more about the incident and asked for a description of the man. After explaining this, the officer showed us a picture of the guy. It was an obvious mugshot, and it was the same guy. They thanked us for our explanation and then sent us off back to class. That day, my mom picked me up from school and asked about the cop at the school and what all he said. I had told her about the incident at prom, so she was already aware, but she said that she also got an email that the school sent out to everyone about this guy. It mentioned that they had a suspicious and unidentified person in the area that was also reported by students, and they reacted quickly by calling authorities. And later that night, a cop had stopped behind a car that was parked near our school with all their lights off and questioned them. Our gym teacher saw the guy leaving in a car and gave them the details as well. The car and the guy matched the description, so they detained him. They sent the email letting them know that he was still in custody after being identified by witnesses, and that if they had any other questions, they could call the school or the officer handling the case. It was a relief to know that that guy wasn't out walking around, but it also creeped me out just that much more, knowing that he was still nearby, like he was waiting. I wanted to include this, but of course, I can't confirm the validity of it as it was all from word of mouth. One of my friends said that their parents called the officer and they told them that they searched for his car and they found rope, duct tape, a knife, condoms, and weed. The weed at least matches up to the story that he was feeding us that night, if that information was true. Then, what the hell was his plan? It put shivers down my spine thinking what could have happened if any of us went with him that night. For the most part, it was a fantastic night, but it was also very memorable for us. From then on, I promised myself that if anything ever seemed off, especially when it comes to another person, I would tell someone immediately. I'm glad no one went with him that night, but it's always in the back of my mind of what could have happened. And here's the riddle for this video. Hello everyone, it's your creepy sister here. Thank you so much for watching the video. I really appreciate it. I would also like to give some extra love to my Patreon members, my channel members, and also my tippers. Thank you so much. If you would like to extend a little bit more support for the channel, don't forget to leave a like and a comment down below. If you would like to become a Patreon member, a channel member, a tipper, or even to buy merch, check out the links in the description below. Again, thank you. And I hope you stay scared, because your fear feeds me.